This is our final video, part 4 in video series 3 about availability and event management in Bazefield. We're just going to quickly review videos 1 to 3 and what they went over, and then we'll get into a live solution demonstration of how to pull out the critical availability data based on all the allocations. So in videos 2 and 3, we talked about this automated process of how allocations are generated. In video 3, we then talked about the importance of manual editing and how users can change classifications and categories of loss data. Now we're finally at the fun part, the icing on the cake. This video focuses on use of the availability statistics application, which automatically rolls up all the allocations into one nice and easy consistent view across your assets to understand your top reliability issues, your top alarms, your top categories, how much money you're losing or how much money you're making, all in one nice simple user application. So let's get into it. All right, back in the portal, let's go over what these availability statistics are and how to get to them. Again, just go to Analysis, Availability. We've done all the hard work of looking at the allocations, doing manual editing and making sure all these allocations are accurate to our best of knowledge and to our satisfaction. We've used the timeline tool, the allocations tool, the assets tool. Now it's time for the fun part. So let's go. Let's say I want to check out a certain site, let's say for the last 30 days. I'm gonna hit apply. Again, this will just pull up the allocations here, but if I want to get a whole roll up of all the losses, all these kilowatt hours and dollars and time in each of these classifications, I can go right to my statistics and it will do it basically all for me. So depending on how many sites and how long of a time, this might take a few seconds to calculate. You can see, even for 30 days for a certain site, it should be relatively good performance. If it's not, you might want to launch a ticket with our support team to look into a SQL database issue or something along those lines. But typically, it's a good performance. Up top, you'll see here. Let me actually just zoom in and zoom out so you can see it a little bit better. Right here, I'm looking at the Win GADS performance method of calculating time and production-based availability. And again, this is all based on the classification and availability rules embedded to each of these category sets, which we went over in video 1. Once we have that defined, then it's a matter of just simply counting up the energy and the time spent in each category and applying the availability rule to that category, and that availability number is then calculated automatically. So it's saying we had a time-based availability the last 30 days of 98.5, production-based availability of 97.5. Then it gives me a summary of all the lost production for this site. There's two numbers here. There's unavailable lost production. This essentially is lost production in any unavailable category. This is the lost production that is essentially counting against you in this metric. These, from a turbine or inverter perspective, these are technically usually things related to the turbine or the inverter, like a fault, a maintenance, a repair, right? Then there's more or less the all-in lost production. This is like the IEC operational lost production. This number will always be bigger than this number, sometimes substantially, because this number will have things like curtailment losses. It will have grid losses, BOP losses, because typically those do not count against, let's say, your OEM availability, but they still are costing you at the end of the day. So we measure it for you, but these losses up here do not count against these two numbers, just to give you the difference there. So these are aggregates of your losses, but then you can drill in to a pie chart, or you can look at a bar chart or waterfall plot of each of your losses per category. And you can look at these losses from either a frequency, this is how often a category of this, like this popped up, or duration, how often the machines were in this category, or energy, how much energy the machines lost while in that category. A few things too, if you remember, we give an available ranking to the assets, so you can toggle on or off whether you're showing the available category, so to speak. So when I click show available categories, you can see I have my reserve shutdown and my curtailments and my other things that don't account against availability show up. But let's say I just want to look at the categories that count against my availability. I just want to make sure that is unclicked and I get just the category sets that will count against this number up here. You can also just filter by individual category. So let's say I wanted to look at just my forced outages. It's going to calculate stats right in my just enforced outage. But then I might want to say, well, what were my top events or my top alarms within the forced outage category? From there, I can sort by root causes instead. And now this will give me my exact top 10 alarms in my forced outage category. And so this is really, from an operator standpoint, your top 10 list of what you might need to work on and how much energy was lost because of each of these events. It should be noted that we also calculate dollars here. Lost dollars is calculated, or lost revenue is calculated one of several ways. If this is a PPA, you can import your PPA data into Bazefield. If this is a merchant pricing, like an ERCOT site, we actually have ERCOT and Tenaska integration that enables us to pull spot market data in this tool. So this will enable you to edit. Let's say the machine goes down from 138 to 215. We can look at the nodal price within that period, average it, and use that for our lost revenue calculation. So multiple different ways you can configure the lost revenue calculation to be any domain point in the system. So this is just a way to slice and dice the data in different ways. You can look at it from categories. You can look at it from an asset-based perspective, which will give you your top assets in terms of losses, or again, the events. One farther thing is you can even sort by the labels. So the labels are kind of the subclassing that we did in the allocation management. So say, for example, I go to my allocations and I didn't want to change the category of a certain allocation, but I just wanted to label it with something. You know, maybe this was a certain, I wanted to give a subgroup of, a electrical issue or whatever. I'm going to add that as a label here. You can see it shows up in your allocation system. But then the cool part about that is I can go back to my statistics and rerun and aggregate all my statistics within the labels too. So if I go back now and choose labels, it's going to recalculate everything, and it's going to show me that electrical label, and it will break down the dollars and megawatt hours and the amount of assets and the times a number of allocations that were labeled as electrical. And these labels could be anything. They could be used, I've seen them used to track, like, let's say, an ice storm that passes through on January 21st. You want to have a specific label for a very specific ice storm. You can create an ice storm label the allocations, and then automatically report up and calculate with the labels that way. So this is really a way to standardize your entire availability process, and it allows you to choose any allocation system you want. So you could look at your GADS availability, or if you want to say, hey, I want to challenge GE. This is a GE site. I want to challenge GE on their contractual availability. I'm going to go now and just choose GE contractual, and it's the exact same page, the exact same breakdown of availability and losses, now just with the GE specific categories that will be on display as opposed to the GADS categories. So I'm going to say top 10 categories, and I'm in GE contractual, and this will slowly here load up the categories. There we go. Downtime, repair time, maintenance time, and here's my time and production-based availability. This will be then used to compare, let's say, to GE MCR report and challenge GE on their system. And again, this operates live. So if I go back to allocations, I make a change of a category, I come back to statistics, my availability numbers will be updated because the system is calculating all this on the fly live. So there's no recalculations that need to be done. One further use case, in addition to, let's say, just availability stats in the availability tool, a lot of our standard reports will pull from the availability system to display availability metrics within the report. So for example, our traditional GADS report, both for wind and solar, what it does is either for an individual site or fleet, you pick the month that you want to run it, like so. That will query the availability tool, the same statistical call that was just made in our availability application, and it will display the data just in a different way that is feasible to and meets the the NERC GAD specific reporting requirements. So we're just going to let this generate. Sometimes monthly reports can take, 20, 30 seconds to query all the data. There we go. I'm going to go then and go to my performance data, and you can see now all my performance data for GADS has been summed up in terms of the amount of turbine hours spent in each of those availability allocations. So any custom report you make can just query the allocation system quite easily if you ever need to display your availability metrics in a different manner. So that kind of wraps up this video series. I hope that gave you a start to end look on how to generate your allocations, what is important when you're managing them, and then how to look at the results to manage your plant performance.